ladies and gentlemen. It is just coming up to 11 o'clock now, and I would like to welcome you to the AGM of Seraphim Space Investment Trust. This is our third AGM, and I'd like to confirm that a quorum is present and therefore declare the meeting open. Now, before getting on with the formalities, I would first like to introduce our non-executive board. Will Whitehorn is my name, and this is Sue Ingalls, Angela Lane, and Christina McComb is joining us virtually. I would like also to introduce the investment management team looking after your investment on a day-to-day basis, led by Mark Boggart, who is here, who's going to be presenting to us, and Sarah Shackleton, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Seraphim Fund Managers. Despite the volatility which continues in the markets globally, the board is pleased with the progress made to date. And the company, we believe, is well placed to achieve its investment objective of generating capital growth over the long term. Our investment manager is actively pursuing an extensive pipeline of investment opportunities and progressing those opportunities that offer the best risk-adjusted returns for our shareholders. The company released its Q1 results, which you will have seen, and earlier this morning we had an analyst meeting. And although we presented NAV the 30th of September of £222.9 million as a decrease of 2.31%, I'm going to just mention the fact that there has been a sea change with the US election last week and a half ago. Really what we are looking at is a situation whereby space has come to the fore in US policy, defence has come back to the fore in US policy, and although the Trump presidency is weeks away, it is clear that with Elon Musk assuming a senior advisory role in government, we believe the outlook for the space domain has moved up several gears. It remains to be seen how Europe will react to that, but both individually and collectively, these shifts in policy make us believe the outlook for SSIT's portfolio is more positive even than it's been to date. Since the period end, for example, the US dollar has strengthened considerably following the US election, and based upon the US dollar GBP exchange rate of 1.25 as of the 22nd of November on Friday, with all other variables unchanged, the portfolio's fair value has increased almost £10 million. So that has been a significant change in the last few days. And similarly, the US listed companies in the portfolio have seen share price appreciation, which has been quite dramatic in some cases. AST, Space Mobile, Spire Global and Arcit have risen in value by £2.7 million as of the 22nd of November compared with that 30th of September valuation. So these are significant changes, and I'll now hand over to Mark Boggart, our manager, to present the presentation.
Great, well thank you. Thank you, Will, and good morning to everybody. So I won't dwell on this slide, the headlines. I'll get straight into the detail. So the headlines. So NAV was at 53.7 pence, net assets to £222 million, and as Will said, thanks to FX post the period, that's up a further 10 million now. The right-hand chart shows SSIT rebased over the last year compared against the AIC peer group. So these are companies like Chrysalis and Schiehallion. And what you can see is that there's been considerable volatility during the course of the year. For a few quarters, good correlation with our peer group, but in the last quarter to the 30th of September, we saw underperformance. So during our presentation and discussion today, I hope I can demonstrate why we believe that SSIT is well positioned to close that gap and to reduce that discount. We believe that we are very well differentiated from our AIC peer group, who are generalist technology investors, whereas we're specific with drivers around defence and climate that we believe is going to make that gap change. So moving to the next slide, this looks at investments that were made during the period. In this case, there was just one investment, a $5 million investment, a follow-on investment into our existing portfolio company, All.Space. This is a UK-based antenna manufacturer. What their antennas allow them to be able to do is to sit on the back of any moving vehicle, a car, a boat, a plane, a tank, and connect directly to any satellite So that's any satellite in any orbit, and it can connect to multiple satellites simultaneously, which is a unique capability and really opens up the market for connectivity from moving vehicles. So during the last quarter, Allspace announced a $44 million funding round, which was led by a company called Boca Group. This is the round that we participated in. The other thing that they announced was a new CEO. Paul McCarter joined as CEO. He was previously COO, and he's moved into the new role to enhance manufacturing scalability and to strengthen customer engagement. And for those of you that joined in the recent Capital Markets Day webinar, Paul was on the panel there talking about his business and talking about his view for the year ahead. So he was particularly excited about Allspace's strategic focus on the defence market, and in particular the US Department of Defence, which is their largest customer. And in light of Trump's positioning in defence and space, he believes that the company is very well positioned based on existing contracts to deliver very large revenues from US Army, US Navy, UK and European customers. So this next slide looks at divestments during the period, and there was one during this period. Following the IPO of Astroscale, we immediately sold around 40% of SSIT's holding, returning 3.5 million in cash. In this period, we sold a further 551,000 shares, and then post the period, we sold an extra 78,000 shares. So they resulted in a further 3.5 million pounds of cash for recycling in the portfolio. So these next couple of slides look at key developments in the portfolio during the period. So our most important company, ISI, 20% of NAV, announced a number of contracts. One was a 5-year contract with NASA, and they are supporting the NASA's Earth Science Division, providing their SAR data capability. But more importantly, during the period, ISI also announced a multi-satellite landmark deal with the Greek government. Now, this is the third government that has bought a package of satellites and capability from ISI, so that they have their own sovereign capability, but it also fits into the broader ISI constellation. We expect more of these in the future, and it's a key driver of growth for the business. Deorbit reached final close on its €150 million C series. So this will allow the company to continue developing its ION satellite carrier, which is a space taxi. They've booked 7 launches for 2025, so it's going to be a busy year for them. They're also going to accelerate their collaboration with government. They've recently established a beachhead in the US. They're going to be manufacturing these vehicles in the US, and the company's also out there looking for strategic acquisitions. And then finally, we've got the US defence company Hawkeye 360. They are the leading global player in signals intelligence. And what they announced during the quarter was that their most recently launched 6 satellites are now functional and working properly. And this is really important. This extra capacity was really needed by their customers in areas of interest like the Ukraine and in Israel and over the China Seas. So it's really important that they have got the ability to be able to continue to serve their US DoD customers, but they've also got big customers in the Coast Guard and other national defence agencies. So AST Mobile was a great portfolio company to be in during the period. They successfully launched their first 5 satellites that are effectively their cell towers in space. From these cell towers, they're able to communicate directly with any mobile phone, regardless of the age of that phone, to provide 5G internet connectivity and voice. So on the back of this news, the share price went up to a market capitalization of $10 billion, 125% uplift during the quarter, with the shares priced at $26 at the end of the period. So Skylo, which is another one of our direct to mobile phone plays in the market, although this is slightly different. Rather than putting up their own satellites, they reuse the capacity of the legacy players to enable them to be able to communicate directly to any mobile phone, in the first instance to provide SOS communication, but in the next instance to provide text and WhatsApps. So soon you'll be able to communicate with the family when you're on an aeroplane. So they had a good quarter. They announced a exclusive partnership with Google around their Pixel phones, their flagship Pixel phones. And then they also announced a contract with Verizon, the US's largest mobile network operator, that will be using their capability in the US market with their subscribed customers. So these two are great examples of how space is playing an important role, increasingly working with the leaders within the tech market, the large tech, and we expect this as a theme to continue into the future. So this is a snapshot of our portfolio. Really no change from the full year results. It's still about a third UK, third Europe, third US. The majority of the assets are still in the growth stages. The top 10 account for 76% of NAV, with our 25 million of cash, 11.2% of NAV. And we believe that this cash is sufficient to allow us to continue to support the portfolio and make very selective additional investments to add to the portfolio. So final slide before I pass back to Will. This is drawn from our quarterly report, the Seraphim Space Index. So this reports on the private capital flows globally in the space domain, and there has been 5 consecutive quarters of growth. So to the year to the 30th of September, we saw $8.8 billion of private investment going into the space domain. So one of the notable features of the period, certainly in the first half of the year, was the first time that we'd seen China investing more than America. Now this reverted in the third quarter, so that US has now surpassed China. They did year to date $2.7 billion versus China's $2.1 billion. But this has got the US alerted. So also during the period worth mentioning was that China's entered the global race for telecommunications from space. They've launched the first 18 satellites in their 1,000 sales satellite mega constellation. So this is their ambitious project, aiming for a total of 1,300 satellites to rival the Starlink. So looking ahead, these developments in China are really being keenly watched by the US administration, and they're likely to lead to be a sort of key element of the budget setting for both NASA and for DoD in the year ahead. And while it's too early to gauge the real impacts of the new administration, as Will said in his outlook, we believe that it's going to be net positive for the space sector. So Trump has really evidenced himself in his previous administration making significant changes to the space landscape. So that included the establishment of the Artemis program. So this is about bringing together countries to determine how you behave when operating on the moon. And then the launch of the National Space Council, and most importantly, the launch of the US Space Force. So that was a Trump initiative. So moving forward, we expect positive momentum in all of these. We think that Artemis will gain momentum. The President-elect has already demonstrated a strong interest in creating a Space National Guard. In Europe, we see NATO members are increasing their defence commitments. So Trump had already warned the members of NATO not to rely on their spending anymore because none of them were meeting the minimum 2% requirement. During the course of the last few years, they've now got towards that 2%, but now it's not believed that that's enough given Trump's views on supporting Ukraine and beyond. So we see that Europe is really going to be doubling down again on defence, and we see that that is likely to channel through to a substantial proportion of investment into new space and as a consequence into our portfolio. We also expect, given the buoyant defence sector, that M&A is going to start to really step up in this market. and we think that our portfolio companies are likely to be on both sides of that. So thank you for your attention. I'll pass back over to Will.
Thank you, Mark. Before we move on to the business of the AGM and the resolutions, are there any investment-related questions to that presentation that anybody wants to ask? Yes and yes. Go first.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the presentation there. Couple of questions. First one was on the portfolio. I think you said 7% of the assets are in the rest of the world, and so it's 7%. So outside of US, UK, and Europe.
It's about a third US, a third UK, and a third Europe.
Okay. So you mentioned China, which was very interesting, obviously, and so I'm thinking of China, India, and Japan. Are you looking at possible investments in those countries, because they're obviously...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we don't invest whatsoever in China. So we have nothing to do with China. We don't accept any investment into our organisation from China. We don't work with companies that have already got Chinese-based investments in their cap table. This will enable us to be able to ultimately sell these companies to the US. If there's any Chinese element, you can't sell the company through CFIUS, and that means that it closes the opportunity to the largest and most liquid M&A market in the world. So China is off. But in relation to Japan and India, they're very much on. So we've made one investment into Japan already. We invested into Astroscale. That was the company that IPO'd recently, and then we've been selling on the back of that IPO. That's a company that's focused on in-orbit servicing, removing debris from space. So they're the global market leader in that area. We expect to make more investments in Japan. The Japanese government has put an $8 billion fund together to support any of their companies or any of the activity in the country. They'll match fund any activity in space. So there's a huge amount of development there. We've actually seen a number of large Japanese investors investing into our private fund. In relation to India, this is a really exciting market. We've made one investment called Pixel already, which I referred to in my presentation there. It's a hyperspectral company. This has already become one of the leading companies in India, but we're really excited about the Indian market. There's a heritage in space. There's a massive population that are well qualified, and their labour pricing is competitive globally. So this is a market that we're really keenly focused on, and we're really going to be focusing our accelerator program to try and identify some really interesting Indian plays. So that part of the market is very much in focus.
Thank you. There's one over here and then here.
Yeah, I was just wondering basically about the top three holdings, because in a way they're almost the whole portfolio. It's a very large weighting in the top three. Are you happy with that sort of position?
Delighted. Yeah. These companies are perfectly positioned for the market that we are now focused on. So, you know, we believe these businesses are going to thrive in the years ahead, and there's already strong evidence that they're doing that already. They're all well funded, and yeah, we're excited about the outlook for them. So it's not by accident that we are weighted in these portfolio companies.
And here, thank you.
Oh yeah, sorry to. I'm a bit of a novice here, but I'm just wondering what's so special about Allspace's antenna, which no other company can do. Second question is, Astroscale, you've sold down most of your shares. How much have you got left, and what sort of percentage of the portfolio is it? And the third question is on Spar Global. You say they've encountered some difficulty with their accounting. Has there been any development on their accounting?
So
Allspace first.
Allspace, yeah. So Allspace have developed a light-based technology that enables them to have no moving parts in their antenna, that enables them to be able to connect to multiple satellites simultaneously, but in any space orbit, low Earth orbit, mid-Earth orbit, and geostationary orbit. Now, previously, other competing solutions can connect to a single satellite in a single orbit. So in the past, that's not really mattered so much because there hasn't been a huge range of choice between GEO, MEO and LEO, but now there is. So for example, Starlink has got a huge constellation, and it's very low cost and readily available. So the military effectively want to be able to use that as a fallback from the antennas that they're able to use that connect directly to their own telecommunications infrastructure, but can automatically fall back to alternatives. So the other players in the market are talking about doing this. This is very much the holy grail of what the market is looking for, but this company has already got this product in the hands of customers and has won some large contracts with the world's most important customers, US DoD, US Army, and likewise in the UK, and they're now delivering that product to them. So that's all.space. In relation to Astroscale, we've sold down to less than 10%.
I think we've got about 12%.
12% left on our holding there. I won't go into our rationale for that because this is a publicly available. We don't want to go into the detail of that company, but we are happy with the prices that we achieved in that disposal. And then in relation to Spire, no, there hasn't yet been a response to their SEC investigation into their accounting practices, but they have, outside of the period, just made a significant divestment. They've sold their maritime business for around $240 million to a company called Kepler, and that completely eliminates all of their debt. So on the back of that, the share price has responded pretty positively. I think it's up 66% since the 30th of September. So, but the accounting issue, I think, is still an outstanding item. It related to revenue recognition.
Thank you. And there was a question, another question over here. Or have you finished? One more.
I have to ask about the discount. Actually, well, two questions really. What's the view of the board regarding the current discount, which I think is about 40%? And then secondly, are there any plans for any share buybacks? I think the last time you did them was possibly September of last year. Is that being considered now? Basically, because your views on the discount.
The last buyback we did was near an all-time low for the stock, and we did rate it to have been a successful buyback. The board constantly keeps buybacks under review, but we've also got to be mindful of good uses of capital for the future. What we are looking at the moment is a global situation for this industry where we do really see a space industrial revolution underway now. And it's in its early stages, but after 2 or 3 decades of the industry building, the capabilities of it are coming to the fore. And in the environment that we're in, if there's a good use of the shareholder capital to invest in assets that can get the kind of growth we're now seeing potentially in these private companies, we will take those opportunities. But if it was necessary, then the board would absolutely consider it, and we do talk about it at almost every board meeting. Finally, I think that we cannot take account as a board of the macro situation. We have a situation in the UK whereby stocks are not where they should be in the opinion of many shareholders because of extraneous factors like the government's approach to investment, and also the fact that institutions are constrained by redemptions, for example, which we've seen a lot of in the last 18 months. And some of these things, if you look forward, there's no crystal ball, but they probably are beginning to slightly clear through the system. I noted this morning, for example, that Goldman Sachs has just rated the UK as a winning stock market from the results of the US election. For the first time, anyone has said that since Brexit happened some years ago. So, I think that we take all of these things into account, and we are a board who are very experienced, and if it was the right thing to do for shareholders, we would do it. Any other questions? One more over here, and then we'll move on to the AGM business.
Do you expect any of your companies to IPO in the next year or so, or have you got any advance knowledge that they will? I mean, the way to close the discount would be to have more quoted companies where people could be completely certain of the value in the stocks, probably. That's what it seems to me.
That's a good question. I mean, from a general perspective, it is quite clear that quite a lot of, when you're in a situation like this with these companies of the type we have in the portfolio and what is happening in terms of the background markets they operate in, you know, marine, defence, agriculture, climate, there are many of these companies that could see events happening in the next 18 months, 2 years, and those could not only be IPO, but they could also be acquisition by other players in the existing sectors which are coming into UC spaces related to defence or climate management or agricultural insurance. So there are going to be those sort of opportunities for companies beyond IPO, but specific to IPO, I'll ask Mark to...
Yeah, four of the companies are in a process to get IPO ready. Now, when they'll actually press the button on going to an IPO, I don't know. But yeah, it's certainly the intention of a number of companies, and it's also sort of our position as stewards of shareholder money on the board that we encourage these companies to get themselves ready for IPO, because it's sort of in control of the companies to be able to do that, and we believe it's the right thing to do. As these companies go through that process, they often also become M&A targets. So M&A, I think, is going to be a big feature for the year ahead as well.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to the business of the AGM. Prior to the deadline for the receipt of proxy votes, we received 52 proxies appointing the chair of the meeting, representing 139,505,996 shares. Where discretion has been granted to the chair, I intend to vote those shares in favour. Resolutions 1 to 9 are ordinary resolutions and as such require a simple majority of votes in favour to be passed. Resolutions 10 to 12 are special resolutions and as such require a majority of 75% of votes cast in favour to be passed. I demand a poll for all resolutions in accordance with Article 99 of the Company's Articles of Association. We will now proceed to the poll demanded on all resolutions. Computershare will act as the scrutineer of the poll. I would like to advise you of the following with regard to completion of the aforesaid poll cards. If you have already submitted a proxy card to the registrar and do not wish to change your vote, please do not complete the poll card. If you are voting as a third-party proxy or corporate representative, please also write the full name of the person and company you've been appointed to represent. If you know the number of shares which you hold or are representing, or if you are voting on a lesser number of shares than the total holding, please write this number on the top of the card. If 2 or more persons are jointly registered as shareholders, any one of those may vote, but only one. In the event that more than one joint shareholder votes, the vote of the senior joint shareholder will be accepted to the exclusion of others. Seniority will be determined by the order in which the names appear on the share register. Please remember to sign your poll card, otherwise your vote won't be counted. The votes cast will be verified under the scrutiny of Computershare. Are there any questions on any of the resolutions? No, then we will move on. Please complete your poll cards. We will now proceed with the poll, and the final results of the voting will be published via a stock exchange announcement this afternoon and will also be posted on our website. Since there are no more items of official business on the agenda, the poll cards have to be handed in, very true.
The poll is open.
Since there are no further items of official business on the agenda, I declare the poll closed and ask Computershare to tabulate the voting results. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of today's formal proceedings. I declare the meeting closed and thank you all for attending. Thank you.